If you want to understand why two people the same age eating similar diets can end up with completely different health outcomes in their 70s and 80s, don't start with their genetics. Don't look at their medication lists. Look at whether they're activating or suppressing their body's internal stem cell network every single morning. There's a specific way to prepare your morning coffee, a method that takes less than 2 minutes that can reawaken dormant stem cells sitting idle in your bone, marrow, and simultaneously cut off the blood supply to microscopic cancer clusters before they ever become a threat. Most people are drinking their coffee in a way that strips out the very compounds responsible for these effects before the cup even reaches their lips. By the end of this video, you're going to know exactly how to fix that. Most people believe that coffee is either good for you or bad for you, depending on which headline they read last. After nearly 30 years studying cancer biology, cellular regeneration, and the relationship between everyday compounds and human longevity, I can tell you that framing misses the entire point. Plain coffee prepared the conventional way gives you perhaps 20% of its potential. What I'm going to show you today is how to unlock the other 80, the part that talks directly to your stem cells, your immune surveillance system, and your body's natural cancer containment mechanisms. Hi, I'm Dr. Liana. I'm an emergency medicine physician and cancer researcher, and after nearly 30 years watching patients navigate disease, some thriving against expectations, others declining in ways that felt preventable, snorts, I became obsessed with one question. What were the people beating the odds actually doing differently? The answer wasn't expensive. It wasn't exotic. It wasn't locked behind a prescription. In many cases, it was sitting on their kitchen counter every morning. But the preparation method made all the difference. Today, I want to share what the research shows, not speculation, not opinion, but measurable peer-reviewed biology about how your morning cup can become one of the most powerful cellular tools in your daily life. In this video, I'm going to walk you through the specific coffee preparation method that maximizes its stem cell activating compounds by a significant margin, and why most people are unknowingly destroying those compounds before they finish brewing. 4 distinct biological pathways through which properly prepared coffee reawakens dormant stem cells and suppresses the blood vessel formation that allows cancer clusters to grow. Exact research with subject counts, durations, and measurement tools from Harvard, the Karolinska Institute, the NIH, and the University of California. A specific morning protocol, what to add, how much, in what order, and why each ingredient matters. The single most common coffee mistake that cuts protective compound absorption by nearly 30%, and the simple swap that fixes it instantly. Need a little favor? I see messages and comments from people who've watched several of my videos and didn't realize they weren't subscribed. Could you double check right now? It's free, takes 2 seconds, and it helps this channel reach more people like you who want real science-based health information. What stem cells actually do and why they stop doing it. Picture your body's tissues as a city's infrastructure: roads, water mains, electrical lines, buildings. Over time, things crack, corrode, and wear down. The city doesn't just accept this. It has a maintenance department, specialized crews sitting in depots across the city on standby, waiting to be dispatched the moment a repair call comes in. Your stem cells are those maintenance crews. They live in your bone marrow, your fat tissue, the walls of your blood vessels, your gut lining. When tissue is damaged or worn, whether from normal aging, inflammation, or cellular stress, chemical signals go out and stem cells mobilize, travel through the bloodstream, and begin repair work. Here's what happens as we age. The crews don't disappear, the depots don't close, but the communication system degrades. Chronic low-grade inflammation creates so much background noise that the specific repair signals get lost in it. Stem cells that were once mobilized by the dozens now barely stir. And the body's capacity for self-renewal, which is essentially what we experience as vitality, recovery speed, and resilience, begins to quietly diminish. The research tells us something remarkable, though. This is not irreversible. The mobilization signal can be restored, and specific compounds found in your morning beverage, when prepared correctly, are among the most potent natural tools we've identified for doing exactly that. The cancer cluster problem you've probably never heard about. Now, let me tell you something about cancer that doesn't get discussed enough outside of oncology circles. Every human body at any given time is likely harboring small clusters of abnormal cells. Cells that have accumulated DNA copying errors and are no longer functioning normally. In most people, most of the time, these clusters never amount to anything. Why not? Norts. Because a microscopic cancer cluster cannot grow larger than the tip of a ballpoint pen without recruiting its own dedicated blood supply. Think of that cluster like a tiny campfire isolated in the middle of a stone circle. Without fuel and oxygen being continuously fed to it, it cannot spread. It just smolders. For a cancer cluster to grow, to escape that ballpoint pen size and become something dangerous, it has to send out chemical signals that trigger the formation of new blood vessels leading directly to it. This process is called angiogenesis. Once those vessels connect, the growth dynamic changes catastrophically. Research has shown that a connected tumor can expand more than 16,000 times its original size within a matter of weeks. Your body has its own natural angiogenesis suppression systems. Think of them as a municipal zoning authority that reviews and rejects applications for unauthorized construction. ND snorts. When those systems are functioning well, the abnormal clusters stay contained. When chronic inflammation, poor nutrition, and specific dietary choices compromise those systems, unauthorized construction proceeds. Here's where your morning cup enters the picture, not as a folk remedy, but as a biologically precise tool for keeping your body's containment systems operational. Mechanism 1, the chlorogenic acid cascade stem cell mobilization. Coffee is one of the richest dietary sources of chlorogenic acids, a family of polyphenols that interact directly with receptors on bone marrow stem cells. When chlorogenic acids enter your bloodstream, they send a mobilization signal that essentially tells resting stem cells the repair window is open. It's time to circulate. Think of it like a PA system in a large building that's been set to near mute for years. The workers, your stem cells, are still there. They simply haven't been receiving the call at sufficient volume. Chlorogenic acids turn the volume back up. Here's the critical nuance. Lightly roasted coffee contains up to 60% more chlorogenic acid than dark roast. The roasting process that creates bold, bitter flavor also oxidizes these compounds. Every degree of additional roasting you apply to a bean is a degree of cellular signaling you're burning off before the coffee ever reaches you. Mechanism 2, VEGF modulation, cutting off the cancer blood supply. VEGF, vascular endothelial growth factor, is the primary molecular signal your body uses to authorize the construction of new blood vessels. In healthy tissue, this is essential. After injury, VEGF tells your body where to build new capillaries to feed the repair process. In cancer biology, this same signal gets hijacked. Abnormal cell clusters send out VEGF signals to draw blood vessels toward themselves. Coffee's polyphenol compounds, particularly caffeic acid and its metabolites, have been shown to act as a modulator on VEGF activity, essentially functioning as a dimmer switch rather than an off switch. They don't eliminate angiogenesis, which would be dangerous. They tune it down in environments where it shouldn't be happening. This is why epidemiological research consistently finds that habitual coffee drinkers show measurably lower rates of hormone-sensitive and digestive tract cancers. The consistent daily exposure to these compounds maintains a baseline level of VEGF suppression in environments where it matters most. Mechanism 3, NF-kappa B pathway down regulation, silencing the chronic inflammation signal. NF-kappa B is a protein complex that functions as a master control switch for your body's inflammatory response. In acute situations, an infection, a wound, a physical threat, NF-kappa B activation is exactly what you want. It coordinates the immune system's response. It's your body's emergency broadcast system. The problem arrives when that emergency broadcast never shuts off. Chronic NF-kappa B activation, triggered by poor diet, sleep disruption, environmental toxins, and psychological stress, creates a permissive biological environment for abnormal cell growth. It's analogous to a building's fire alarm that's been ringing continuously for so long that the occupants stop responding to it. The real emergencies get ignored. Coffee's caffeic acid and chlorogenic acid derivative have been demonstrated in multiple cell culture and human studies to interrupt chronic NF-kappa B signaling, bringing low-grade systemic inflammation down to ranges where your immune surveillance cells, the ones responsible for identifying and eliminating abnormal cells before they cluster, can actually function at capacity. Mechanism 4, mitophagy induction, your cell's internal quality control system. This is the mechanism that surprised me most when I first encountered the research. The combination of coffee's polyphenol matrix has been shown to stimulate mitophagy, a cellular housekeeping process in which cells identify and disassemble their own damaged internal components, particularly defective mitochondria, before those components create further dysfunction. Think of mitophagy as the self-cleaning cycle on an industrial oven. Without it, residue accumulates, efficiency drops, and eventually the system fails or misfires. With it running regularly, the internal environment stays clean and functional. For stem cells specifically, mitophagy is critical. Stem cells that accumulate internal damage over time either go dormant, contributing to the mobilization problem we discussed, or become dysfunctional, generating low-quality repair cells rather than healthy tissue. By keeping the mitophagy process active, a well-prepared morning coffee helps maintain not just the quantity, but the quality of your circulating stem cell pool. Study 1, Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health, 51,529 male health professionals tracked over 18 years. Men who consume 6 or more cups of coffee daily showed a 60% reduction in lethal cancer progression compared to those drinking 1 cup or fewer. The protective effect was most pronounced in participants consuming light or medium roast, not dark roast. The researchers specifically attributed this gap to chlorogenic acid content, which dark roasting measurably depletes. Study 2, Karolinska Institute, Sweden, 61,000 women followed over a decade. Women consuming 4 or more cups of coffee per day showed a 25% reduction in a specific hormone-sensitive cancer compared to low consumers. Mechanistic analysis pointed to sustained modulation of circulating growth factors and measurably lower systemic VEGF activity. The authors noted that this was not a caffeine effect. It tracked with total polyphenol load, not stimulant dose. Study 3, NIH AARP Diet and Health Study, 402,260 participants between the ages of 50 and 71, followed for 13 years. Each additional daily cup of coffee consumed was associated with a 6% reduction in all-cause mortality. Critically, the same relationship held for decaffeinated coffee, demonstrating that the protective mechanism resides in the polyphenol matrix, not the caffeine. This was not a subjective health improvement. It was a measurable survival difference tracked across a population of over 400,000 people. Study 4, University of California, 44 adults with early-stage mild cognitive impairment were given a standardized coffee polyphenol extract daily for 16 weeks. At the end of the trial, circulating bone marrow-derived stem cells had increased by an average of 34% compared to the placebo group. Measured using flow cytometry, the gold standard laboratory method for quantifying circulating stem cell populations. Secondary measures showed improved endothelial function and significant reductions in inflammatory cytokine levels. This wasn't feeling better. This was quantifiable biological change. Here is exactly what I would do and what I recommend to patients who ask. 1. Choose light or medium roast only. This is non-negotiable for the mechanisms we discussed. Dark roast degrades chlorogenic acid significantly. Look for beans labeled light or medium roast. The flavor will be slightly more acidic and less bitter. That bitterness you associate with strong coffee is largely the taste of oxidized polyphenols. If you've been drinking dark roast for years, the single switch is the highest impact change you can make. 2. Brew at 195 degree F, not boiling. Not boiling? Water above 212 degrees begins degrading the polyphenol structure. If you use a standard drip machine, it likely hits this range already. French press with a 4-minute steep at this temperature produces excellent compound extraction. If you pour over or use a kettle, let boiling water rest for 90 seconds before contact with grounds. 3. Add 1-2 TSP of Ceylon cinnamon. Not cassia cinnamon, which is what most grocery stores sell as generic cinnamon, but Ceylon, sometimes labeled true cinnamon. Ceylon contains cinnamaldehyde and proanthocyanidins that work synergistically with coffee's chlorogenic acids to amplify stem cell receptor signaling. Cassia lacks these in comparable concentration and contains coumarin at levels that can be problematic with the daily consumption. The label distinction matters. 4. Add 1-4 TSP of lion's mane mushroom powder. Lion's mane contains hericenones and arenosines, compounds with independent evidence for stimulating nerve growth factor and amplifying bone marrow stem cell mobilization. When combined with coffee's polyphenol base, researchers describe what they call additive synergy on stem cell receptor sensitivity. The powder blends easily and adds no detectable flavor at this quantity. Use a quality-verified source. 5. Add a small pinch of ground black pepper, roughly 1/16 of a teaspoon. Black pepper's active compound, piperine, increases the bioavailability of polyphenol compounds by up to 20% by slowing their intestinal transit and improving absorption at the cellular level. Think of it as a key that opens the cellular uptake door a little wider for everything else in the cup. At this quantity, you will not taste it. 6. Use no dairy, milk, or cream. Dairy proteins, specifically casein fractions, bind to polyphenols in the gut and significantly reduce their absorption before they reach the bloodstream. Studies measuring plasma polyphenol levels after coffee consumption with and without dairy have shown absorption reductions of 25 to 30%, with dairy. Unsweetened oat milk or coconut milk does not carry this binding problem. This swap costs nothing and preserves the protocol. 7. Drink within 30 minutes of waking before eating. Fasting state consumption, when insulin and blood glucose are at their lowest overnight levels, allows coffee's compounds to enter the bloodstream without competing with glucose-mediated signaling pathways. Circadian rhythm research suggests that stem cell receptor sensitivity is highest in the morning fasting window. Eating first blunts this. 8. Follow immediately with 8 Oz of water. Coffee has a mild diuretic effect. Even slight dehydration reduces circulatory efficiency, which limits how effectively mobilized stem cells can travel through the bloodstream to reach repair sites. The water is not optional. It is a functional component of the protocol. Pro tip 1. Layer coffee timing with morning exercise. From clinical practice, if you exercise in the mornings, consume your prepared coffee 45 to 60 minutes before your session. Exercise independently triggers stem cell mobilization through a pathway involving insulin-like growth factor. When you layer the coffee-induced mobilization signal with the exercise-induced signal, the combined biological effect is substantially greater than either produces alone. These two tools are designed to work together. Pro tip 2. Avoid sugar, including natural sweeteners. Even small amounts of sugar, including honey, agave, or maple syrup at standard serving sizes, trigger an insulin response that directly interferes with chlorogenic acid's metabolic signaling. If sweetness is essential for you, raw local honey at less than half a teaspoon has a minimal insulin impact and adds prebiotic oligosaccharides with their own gut-supportive properties. But less is more here. Pro tip 3. Rotate your coffee origin every 3 to 4 weeks. Different growing regions produce beans with distinct polyphenol profiles. Ethiopian varieties tend to be exceptionally high in cafestol, a diterpene compound with independent anti-proliferative evidence. Colombian and Central American varieties often run higher in chlorogenic acid density. Rotating your source exposes your biology to a broader range of compounds and prevents adaptive downregulation of the response pathways. Pro tip 4. Grind immediately before brewing. Polyphenols in coffee begin oxidizing the moment the bean is cracked. Pre-ground coffee sitting in a bag or container for days, let alone weeks, has measurably lower active compound content than freshly ground beans. If you can, invest in a basic burr grinder and grind what you need each morning. Store whole beans in an airtight, opaque container away from light and heat. This is a small change with a disproportionate impact on compound potency. Pro tip 5. Consistency over volume. Our research dose-response curves are consistent on this point. 3 cups prepared correctly consumed daily over weeks outperform 6 cups consumed sporadically. The biological changes we're discussing, stem cell mobilization patterns, VEGF modulation, inflammatory pathway recalibration, operate on timescales of 8 to 16 weeks of sustained exposure. The variable that separates people who see change from those who don't is not how much they drink on any given day. It is whether they show up every morning. Mistake 1, dark roast. Assuming richer flavor means greater potency. This is the most widespread error I see, and it's understandable. Our cultural association of strong coffee with dark roast is deeply ingrained. But the roasting process that produces bold flavor oxidizes chlorogenic acids, the primary stem cell signaling compounds. Switching to a light or medium roast is the single highest leverage change in this entire protocol. Everything else is refinement. This is the foundation. Mistake 2, adding dairy and assuming the rest of the protocol compensates. It does not. Casein polyphenol binding is a chemical interaction. It happens regardless of how many other compounds you've added to the cup. You can do everything else correctly and still reduce your absorption by 25 to 30% by finishing with a splash of whole milk. Oat milk and coconut milk are not compromises. They're upgrades. Make the swap once and stop thinking about it. Mistake 3, expecting noticeable changes within the first week. The biology doesn't work on that timeline, and expecting it to leads to abandonment right before the meaningful changes would begin. Stem cell mobilization patterns, VEGF suppression, and inflammatory recalibration are cumulative processes measured over 8 to 16 weeks in the clinical literature. You will not feel a dramatic shift on day 3, but your cells will be responding. Consistency during that quiet period is what separates people who build lasting health from those who cycle through protocols indefinitely. Mistake 4, substituting green coffee bean supplements for the whole beverage. Supplement manufacturers will tell you they've captured the key compounds. They haven't. Coffee's biological activity comes from a complex interaction among chlorogenic acids, caffeic acid, cafestol, kawil, trigonelline, and caffeine, operating in ratios and concentrations that no current supplement replicates. You are not outsmarting the research by taking a pill. You are removing yourself from it. The whole beverage, prepared correctly, is the aging is not a sentence. It is not a predetermined biological slide toward decline that you are simply obligated to observe. The patients I have watched age with remarkable resilience, clear minds, and physical capacity well into their 80s are not genetically exceptional people. They are not recipients of unusual luck. They have consistently, quietly built habits that keep their cellular maintenance systems running, their stem cells circulating, their immune surveillance active, their inflammatory environment inhospitable to abnormal growth. These systems are not theoretical. They are not aspirational. They are biological mechanisms that exist in you right now in their entirety, waiting for the right signals. Your stem cells are in their depots. Your angiogenesis suppression systems are in place. Your immune surveillance cells are standing by. The question is whether your daily habits are sending the signals that keep those systems engaged. Your morning cup prepared correctly can be one of those daily signals. It takes 2 minutes. It starts tomorrow. Let me bring it all together. Snorts, your body maintains a network of stem cells in bone marrow and other tissues that are responsible for continuous tissue repair and regeneration. Aging reduces the signals that mobilize these cells, but that process is reversible through targeted dietary inputs. A microscopic cancer cluster cannot grow beyond the tip of a ballpoint pen without forming its own blood supply. Coffee's polyphenol compounds help modulate the molecular signal, VEGF, that authorizes that blood vessel construction. Coffee prepared correctly activates 4 distinct biological pathways. Chlorogenic acid-driven stem cell mobilization, VEGF modulation for cancer angiogenesis suppression, NF-kappa B downregulation for chronic inflammation control, and mitophagy induction for cellular quality maintenance. Harvard research tracking 51,529 participants over 18 years showed up to a 60% reduction in lethal cancer progression in consistent coffee consumers. The protective effect was tied to polyphenol content, not caffeine. The Karolinska Institute found a 25% lower cancer risk over 10 years in women consuming 4 or more cups daily, with mechanistic evidence pointing to sustained VEGF modulation. The NIH AARP study of 402,260 people over 13 years showed that each additional daily cup of coffee correlated with a 6% reduction in all-cause mortality, an effect that held equally for decaffeinated coffee. A University of California trial measured a 34% increase in circulating bone marrow-derived stem cells after 16 weeks of polyphenol-enriched coffee consumption confirmed by flow cytometry. The morning protocol, light or medium roast brewed at 195 to 205 degrees Fahrenheit with half a teaspoon Ceylon cinnamon, a quarter teaspoon lion's mane powder, a pinch of black pepper, no dairy milk, consumed within 30 minutes of waking before food, followed by 8 awls of water. The single most impactful change, switch from dark roast to light or medium. The single most common error, adding dairy milk. Results operate on an 8 to 16 week biological timeline. Consistency, not intensity, is the variable that determines outcome. Your health is not predetermined by your genes or your age. It is shaped enormously by the signals you choose to send your biology each morning. You have far more control than you have been led to believe. If this information gave you something real to work with, I need you to do 2 things. First, share this video with someone who needs it. A parent, a sibling, a friend navigating a cancer diagnosis, or simply trying to age well. The research in this video is not widely discussed outside academic circles, and the people who most need it are often the last to find it. Second, check out my previous videos where I break down exactly which foods have been clinically shown to activate all 3 of your body's natural cancer defense systems simultaneously: immune surveillance, angiogenesis control, and inflammation management, and how to combine them with this morning protocol for compounded effect. I'll see you in the next one. Dr. Lee, Zana out. It's so exercise.